Friends, hello. It's been a really... This is going to be a really interesting video. Interesting in quotation marks, because it may not be remotely interesting. It's been a shitty few weeks. Maybe months in my sphere for various reasons. I mean, nothing awful has happened aside from the fact that if you care about humanity, things have been shitty. But whatever. And I just want to say, you know, if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, if you have been following the news, I think one thing that's important to say is, like, if you're a person who has experienced the really kind of traumatic events of the last few weeks, if you're a person who has engaged and suffered, if you've been engaged in this and really been traumatized by it, if you've been someone who has suffered assault, I believe you, you know, and I think that's important for people to say. Anyway, what I wanted to do was just share something. I've been really unhappy because it's really hard if you're paying attention to be happy. I just wanted to share. I've been thinking about, like, what do I make on my channel? It's October. I always follow Kelly and Patrick's Embrace the Magical, and I don't feel really magical right now. I just feel sort of low and angry. I'm in like a fugue state where, like, anger chases grief, chases fear, chases frustration, chases anxiety, chases hopelessness, chases the desire to throw your head in the sand. But I wanted to just spend some time thinking about things that make me happy. And so what I've done is I've just in no particular order pulled things off my shelves that make me happy. And so I'm just gonna just do a little video where I talk about decks that just make me happy and make my heart sing for various reasons. And I'm going to start, because it is October, with my beloved Halloween Tarot. This is the first remotely Halloween-like deck I ever had. I did a video recently about October decks. This should really be closer to me than it is. And, I talked about this in my October decks video. Sorry. Also just ate dinner. It's a Rider-Waite-Smith deck that's just charmingly, beautifully, kindly, warmly approaching the Rider-Waite-Smith system with Halloween. Halloween was my favorite holiday when I was a kid. My parents always tell me that the first time I ever saw a jack-o'-lantern, my eyes lit up. It's probably my favorite holiday. And I love this deck with just a joy. It makes me so happy. And we need that. And here's my Dracula moment. Which is so important, right? I love this card. I love this Ace of Pumpkins, the Ace of Pentacles. This deck just makes me really happy. I said in my October video that if I had a hug deck, it's probably this. I love it. It's so clever. And it's not just cute. You know, there's a lot of theme decks. There's a lot of, cartoon decks out there that are just sort of cute or just silly. But this one isn't. You know what I mean? You can read with this one, and so I think it makes me so happy. And I mentioned in that video, this is a deck that I did line the borders in black. This is one of the first decks I ever trimmed. I have another copy of this that was trimmed, and I edged it in silver. And I like this better with the black edges, although it was not easy and it was not fast. But I love this one so much. There are things I would have done differently in terms of the card associations, But just like in the scheme of things, who cares? It just makes me so happy. I love this one. I really do. You know what I mean? I don't read Rider-Waite-Smith much anymore, but it just feels like childhood to me. And for that reason, I'm so happy when I see it. Another deck that really makes me happy right now, and I've talked about this before too, it's another October deck, is Robert M. Place's Vampire Tarot, which is just clever, and like it takes the Halloween Tarot into a sinister place. But Robert M. Place is a genius. His research, his attention to detail, and the way that he creates art that looks like woodblock print but isn't, is a modern iteration of woodblock print. It's so beautiful. I really do think this is my favorite of his decks, and I love a lot of what he's made. Again, this is out of print. It's increasingly hard to find. I would love it if he came out with his own edition of it so that it was more affordable for folks, including the book. I happened on a cheap, like $40 copy of this deck that had the box, that had the cards. It just didn't have the book. And then a very, I talked about this before, a wonderful tarot soul in my life traded a really easy to get deck with me so that she could send me the book. And the book is super, super important to understanding this deck. And Robert M. Place, I'm a writer, so I appreciate good writing, and Robert M. Place is such a good writer. So this deck makes me happy. Two other decks that are on my table, I've showed them a lot recently. There are a lot in the world recently, so I won't talk about them much, but the Megamundin Tattoo Tarot and the Luminous Void Tarot, both of which make me happy right now. Then I just got a stack of decks that over the years have brought me a lot of joy, and this is one of them. This is Corte dei Tarocchi by Anna Maria D'Onofrio. One of my favorite all-time decks. I adore it. I love the cardstock. I love the images. I just love this deck. Again, this is a deck that just makes me feel happy when I see it. I love the size. I love the shape. You know what I mean? It's just a beauty. When I see this art, my heart sings. I'm looking at it now and I'm just like so delighted by it. I love the way it shuffles. Now, it's really strange paper. There's no other deck I felt like this. You cannot riffle shuffle it. And it takes a while to get used to overhand shuffling it. But when you do, the way the tooth in the paper glides against other versions of itself, there's like an air quality to it. Oh my god. It's just a really satisfying shuffle. It looks so beautiful in readings. It's not a deck I use a lot in readings because of the strange size. I like to use a lot of large spreads. If I were to use this in the Council of 13, it would be really hard to get it all out there. But I just adore this deck so much. And I haven't used it in a while, and just taking it out now and seeing it and it just makes me happy. So, I talked about this in the October video. I said if I had a hug deck, it would be the Halloween Tarot, but I think also this one. I adore it. I just adore it. When my book came out, I did a giveaway of this. And I love it so much. It's a weird thing to say, we love inanimate objects, isn't it? I remember, talking with a friend of mine that we love decks. No, we don't love decks. We love people and we love shoes. Like, how could there be a correlation? But this is the Ellis Deck. A deck I've talked about a lot of early videos on my channel. I don't use it much anymore, but it has some of my favorite art. It's got a richness. This was one of the earliest indie decks I ever got my hands on. This is the second edition, and it's so good. When I used this regularly, I got such good readings from this deck. I love this Tower card. I love Taylor Ellis's art. He's so talented. There's a larger, I think, borderless edition of this deck now. I wanted it. It was a lot of money, and I just never pulled the trigger, but I'm so happy I have it. This is, again, another deck that... It's not really in my style, you know what I mean? If, like, I were to say, you know, what decks are really in my style, this would not be it. Like, it's got a little bit of, like, a sci-fi fantasy bent for me, but I adore it. I love, love, love it. You know, here's the back. The new versions have a different back. The first version had a different back, but and I think a lot of the new versions now are on plastic, a lot like the oh gosh, the Golden Thread and their decks. I can't remember the producer of that deck, but I love this deck so much. So that's the Ellis deck. Various versions of it out there in the world. He's a real talent. You know, I had to limit myself, otherwise this video would be 3 days long. So, this will not be a surprise to you, but you know, sometimes people come into your existence at the, you know, with a gift at the right time. Fabulous Kelly Bear made me this beautiful pink, green, and black pouch for my Marshmallow Marseille, which, you know, is one of my favorite decks. This is the first version. I like the new version, but the first version will always be the closest to my heart. I love it so much, and just that it has this really lovely home to live in makes me so happy. You know, I constantly reach for this, you know, in terms of decks that are in use. Like, this isn't on my table right now. The beautiful, equally charming Maria Cecilia is the one that I've been using. These two are like cousins. They're like perfect mates. So this one, you know, the Maria Cecilia is new to my collection, so I've been spending time with that. But this, you know, I was so honored that they let me use the images in my book. And it still just really makes me sing, so love this one so much. Pa-pa-pum. I love the color combination. It reminds me of Lisa Frank, but like a goth Lisa Frank. This is not a print deck, so you may hate me for showing it. It's not a deck I use a whole lot, but it's called the Children Tarot by Lele Luzzatti. It's a Llewellyn, I think it came from Lo Scarabeo. Yeah, it did, Lo Scarabeo. This is one that I've had for a long time, really from the earliest days of my reading life, and I didn't use it a lot in my youthful days because it's primarily a pip deck with embellishments. But it reminds me of Maurice Sendak and Tony DePaolo, both of whom were very formative artists. Maurice Sendak obviously is probably known to a lot of folks, Where the Wild Things Are, etc. Tony DePaolo, a little less famous, but Stregonona is one of his famous books. Again, like decks that make me happy, this is a deck that makes me happy. It's so sweet. I would never let go of this one. And because I do read pips, this is a deck I really should take out more. Maybe it has sort of an innocence and just a kindness to it. So, whoops. I also love the back. It's just a real beauty. I do see it on eBay from time to time when I'm looking for... Look at that. That's straight up Maurice Sendak. Come on. Maurice Sendak. He's such an interesting man. If you can handle a little, like, tissue moment, and you haven't seen this, listen to his... Go to the Fresh Air with Terry Gross podcast or website. Listen to his last interview with her. Breathtaking. He's such a talent. When I was a little kid, wanted to write children's books. And I never really got around to that. I did write a serial as a blog, a children's story called The Adventures of Nugget Silverfish, and the Attack of the Hairy Scary Beast, which was about being a little kid with anxiety. I think you can still find it online, but anyway, children's books were a big part of my childhood, obviously, like most of us. But it was more than just like being told stories. There was just like a goal. I wanted to be Roald Dahl. Well, maybe not quite as nasty a human being, but that was a goal. And the thing that I love about Roald Dahl was the way that he wrote these kids under these incredibly nasty circumstances, and they matched them. You know, Matilda, James and the Giant Peach, the kids matched the nastiness of the circumstances and outwit the adults, the nasty adults. This is a real work of art in such a simple way. This is like a distillation of the beauty of tarot. This is the Tarocchi Fino della Torre in Bologna. It's a limited edition deck. I thought this was Il Meneghello. It's not. It just has a very Il Meneghello feel to it. This was a deck that I really was in search of for a long time. I couldn't find it. Kelly Fitzgerald had been talking about it, and I, for some reason, didn't find it online. I think I got it through Arnel Ondo's site. It is a lot. Color scheme-wise, you can see, you know, if you look at the Marshmallow Marseille and you say, oh, that's not the color scheme, that's not Marseille, this gives you historical precedence for the color scheme in that deck. Like the La Corte di Tarocchi, it has this incredible, beautiful, I mean, it's just, you know, this is such a weird word to use, but it's like a sexy feel to it. It's tactile. The way that it shuffles, you can't riffle shuffle it, but when it overhand shuffles, there's just a real magic to it, and there's a sharp, crisp beauty to the pips. It's very simple. It's really unadorned. But gosh, is it pretty. This is a Bolognese deck. They did create cards that were missing or that were not originally in this deck. Also, can we talk about this is one of the best card backs ever. Beautiful. Again, it has such a beautifully satisfying shuffle. It's large, but it looks great in a spread, and it was money. You know, it wasn't cheap, but I'm so happy when I use it, and so happy to, you know, feel the paper of it. And Tarot's such a tactile experience. You know, it really is. And so, like, I joke about this a lot. When I started reading, we never talked about cardstock. Everything was U.S. Games cardstock, because all the games were all the decks were Llewellyn and U.S. Games. And when an indie deck came out, it was printed on index cards, or it was laminated. Like, and I love Carol Herzer's deck. The way that the cards have such a fluidity to the shuffle. But something happened, you know, in the intervening years, and we got just artful indie decks. And this is one of them. And so this is a deck that really makes me happy, and it comes in this little crate with a card and a wax seal, and it just makes me happy. This next one is new to me. It's a deck that I avoided. I did make a video of this. I was not remotely anticipating liking it. It's Dame Darcy's Mermaid Tarot, and I love it. I have not used it a whole lot. I particularly like this Four of Pentacles, because one of the things I obviously look for in a deck is how hot the men are. It's got diversity, it's got matte gold edging, there's just a handmade quality to it, and over the course of its iterations, it has dealt with some of the potentially copyright infringing things. If you want to read more about that, you can. Benabel Wen actually wrote a great blog about it. But it's just got a great energy to it. I really like it a lot. Again, like the Halloween Tarot, it's got like a fun beauty to it, but there's also, it's not just kitsch. It's not just kitschy. It's like there's something to it that's, it's got depth. It's got energy. I don't like themed decks. I like this one, and the quality of this particular edition, which is the most recent one, magnetic box, beautiful, all these little stickers she sent. There's an Alice Tarot I won't get. Alice in Wonderland is an interesting affair for me. It's a great story. I don't really need 19 Alice decks. I really like the way this deck shuffles. So, there's a lot of cards. It's a weighty, thick cardstock, but I like it a lot. I love the matte gold gilding, edging. This is like luxe and delicious. I would love a Halloween tarot from Dame Darcy. So if Dame Darcy is watching this, the next project, please. Preferably Marseille influenced. Thank you. I'll volunteer to write the guidebook for free. I want so desperately. This is the Vachetta deck. It's not a deck I use a whole lot. It is an Il Meneghello. I just love the colors. It's Pip-ish with embellishments, and it's desperately beautiful, like breathtakingly. The cardstock feels so good. Again, tactile. This, I think I have riffled, and it riffles fairly well. Yeah. Love this deck so much. You can get a mainstream mass market called the Tarot of the Master. The coloration's a little more pastel. It's still beautiful. I've actually only seen that version trimmed because evidently it's got really wide green borders in multiple languages. But this is, again, makes my heart sing. You hear the slidiness of the paper. I don't know if this video is going to be remotely interesting to anyone, but it's a balm for me. It's so nice to talk about things I like rather than railing on Facebook against sexism and racism, among other things. So this is the Il Meneghello version is called I Naibi di Giovanni Vachetta. The Jesus, I'm so tired. The Lo Scarabeo version is Tarot of the Master. This is definitely a version that I prefer, but so good. This is a Lo Scarabeo deck. This is the Ancient Italian Tarot, which I did trim. This is the only deck I've ever trimmed because of the back. It has this great sort of carpet design, and I didn't like the white border on the carpet. And it just so happens that when you trim it, it matched the edges perfectly. And I quite like it the way it looks trimmed. Beautiful back. I edged it in gold, and it looks really sort of swank. Last Halloween, I went to a party, and my costume was sort of Venetian carnival, so I had this black, beautiful black cloak lined in white, a white carnival mask painted with music, the tricorner hat, the sort of pirate moment shirt, and black and white spat shoes. But they asked me to do readings, and I used this because it was right in line with it. The minors are really lovely. Il Meneghello has a version of this. The minors are a little bit different, I guess. I haven't seen that version much. But actually what makes me happy in this version are the beautiful majors. I mean, they just remind me of illustrations from a beautiful romance novel, not a romance novel as in modern erotica, but sort of a romantic period novel. I really love this one. One of the first Pip decks I worked with. So this is the Ancient Italian Tarot trimmed and edged, and I think it looks really great, and I love it. This is a deck I used a fair amount when I was starting out, and I don't use it much, but it is a deck that makes me happy. It's a fairly controversial deck. A lot of people don't like it. I do. This is the Voyager Tarot. It is a collage deck in the most literal sense of the word. Really glossy, sort of sticky cardstock, large cards. But when I was learning, I was looking for something that just felt like the world, and when I got this, it did. It has keywords on it, which I don't love. I'm not a big fan of collage decks. but I think this is classic. I think it works really well. You know, from a practical standpoint, I don't know if like modern printings of this deck have different cardstock and if it's less sticky, if it's easier to handle. But I really like it. I really do. I've never not had a fondness for this deck, despite the fact that a lot of people hate it. And I do not hate it. It makes me happy. I have these two, the Victorian Romantic and the Bohemian Gothic. The Bohemian Gothic I talked about in my October video. Love it. I love the Victorian Romantic. Talk about a deck that I was not expecting to enjoy. I got it out of, fear of missing out. And then I had it in my hands and I said, this is a really good deck. And I'm not a fan of decks that are repurposed art. But it's beautiful. It really is. I love the backs. I've thought about edging it. It probably could use like a, not even a gilded edge, but like a white sparkle edge. But it was expensive, and it, Baba Studios decks don't necessarily take edging all that well. That was not a good shuffle, but the cardstock, like the Bohemian Gothic, is really cool. I like having the two. I don't really combine decks and readings, but I could see using those. I just love this deck. Again, it's a deck that I just want to... one of the signs of success for a deck for me is that you just want to reach out and use it. Despite the fact that it's not necessarily a deck that fits your system. This is one of those. I really adore it. I'm so happy I got it. I'm so happy I got this edition too. The sort of gold, the metallic stamp is cool because it adds depth, but it's not even that. Like, I would have been fine without that because the cardstock is, again, really sexy. The box itself is so beautiful. I love this blue, this teal blue. I have a fountain pen ink that is very similar to this, and it just, oh my god. Like, this is really just a sexy box. It's got this, like, metallic sticker of authenticity. And these decks partner really nicely. So, that's that. The Japaridza deck, I've talked about a lot. That makes me happy. Again, it's one of my primary reading decks. Hate the war card. Everything about it has such a richness and a beauty, though. It just, again, makes me sing. So I love that. And then last but not least, I actually purposely chose this one last just because it was, in a weird way, I had been away from tarot for a while, in the tarot community for a while, feeling burnt out and frustrated about reading about whether or not people were, or being asked about whether or not people were cheating on their partners. And then I found this deck in a Barnes & Noble. This is what I'm going to show you is not the edition that I had, but I found this deck in a Barnes & Noble. I had to get it, and it sort of reignited my love for reading again. And it's the Shadowscapes Tarot. Recently, in a trade for actually the new Patrick Valenza Oracle deck, I got this Czech version, which I had been wanting for a while but didn't want to spend the money on. Stephanie Puimanlaw's beautiful deck. In this particular edition, I love the Llewellyn edition, but I mean this is the edition that this deck deserved. I mean, this guidebook, it's the exact same guidebook in Czech, obviously. But this, why don't modern American publishers, like, this is the same book more or less that came with the deck, but it's like, it's tiny, but it's got all the stuff in there and it's beautiful. It fits in the box. It's a beautiful box. And then the deck itself with its beautiful gilding and its luxurious cardstock. This deck takes my breath away. I don't know if you can see it, but I did just, it's not the easiest to recognize the suits and numbers, so I did on this version just really tiny write the number in a corner, but this is one of my all-time favorite decks. Like the fluidity, the beauty, the lushness, the color, the fantasy of it. I'm so happy to have this particular edition of it. I was so happy to have the version of it that I had for years. If you watch my earliest videos, it was around the time I got this deck, probably 2011, 2012. And I just, you know, there are a lot of decks that I showed you that have stolen my heart, but I don't think I showed you a deck. The Voyager Tarot, the Children's Tarot. I think that's it. Those are the only two I had before this one, and I didn't really use them much. But this one sort of said, "Hey, get the fuck back into reading." And Man Alive did it earn its place. I adore it, and there's so much about this that I shouldn't like. You know what I mean? I'm not like a lover of sort of like fairy fantasy art. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my style. But it really just has a beauty. I think of the tarot decks out there in the world, Stephanie Puimanlaw's beautiful paintings for this deck rank certainly in the top 5 most beautiful tarot decks ever, I have to say. I love it so much. And this edition is just really beautiful with the gilded edges and the gorgeous cardstock. It's a little glossy, but whatever. Shuffles great when you're not exhausted in front of a tripod. And again, it has this really lovely home. Llewellyn, please, if you're going to do a second edition, do this version of it. It's so good. And thanks to the person, I always feel weird about mentioning folks, but the person I traded with, this was kind of a great, you know, from Mildred Payne's like dark, I don't remember the name of it now. What's it called? Doesn't matter. The Oracle deck, not the Pocket Oracle, but the new one that just came out. I got it. I backed it and pre-ordered it because I loved Patrick Valenza's ad campaign, essentially. As soon as I got it, I said, I'm never going to read with this. And then someone said, I want that deck. I'll trade you this unopened Czech version of Shadowscapes. And I was like, sold. I love it so much. So beautiful. Isn't that lovely? Isn't it nice to talk about things that are lovely and that make us happy for once? So there are many more. I could have included so many more. James Eads, Prisma Visions, among them. In fact, I'm surprised I didn't bring that out. I meant to, but whatever. Just you know. Such good times. It's nice to think about things that are happy. So, those are just a collection of decks that I love. Oh, Stella's Tarot is a deck I love. The Petra K, gosh, there's Robert M. Place's Wood Tarot. There's so many, but these are just a sampling. So, if nothing else, I hope this was soothing. And, you know, if you want to, like, rest from the terribleness of the world and make a video with decks that just make you happy, I'd love to see it. So, if you do make one, make a comment. Life has been crazy. Work has been crazy. Writing has been crazy. Just finished just graduated, actually, with my master's degree. All of that. I mean, life has been literally insane. But, so it may take me a while to watch things. I have not actually been watching many videos. I've been trying where I can, but a lot of the free time I have is actually dedicated to watching, like, cooking shows and sleeping. Sigh. So, but, you know, do let me know, and I'll get to them eventually. I'll add them to my watch list. So, hope this was fun and relaxing and escapist to take us away from the craziness. Take care of yourselves. Be awake and smart and kind, and I look forward to chatting with you soon. Be good.